welcome. All right, it's Monday, September 18th, 2017. Thanks so much for joining me at the Benjamin Dixon Show podcast version thereof. Thanks to all of our patrons and all of our supporters. I want to thank our latest patrons, Kevin J. Thanks so much, man, for becoming a patron. Yeah. And also, Jessica T. Thank you so much for becoming, Jessica, thank you for becoming a patron. Yeah. If you would like to support the Benjamin Dixon Show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show, you can by going to patreon.com/the BPD Show. And if you like our stuff, man, shoot us a couple dollars a month, $5 a month or something like that. You know, keep the show going strong, keep us replacing equipment and setting up and getting ready to roll out for you a full-fledged show in addition to everything else that I do. So go to patreon.com. Anyway, let's go straight to a couple of stories. So a couple of things that are going on, and I'm not quite sure where I want to start. Where do we start? Let's start with DACA protesters today interrupting our former Speaker of the House and Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. She had a rally and students came onto the scene and they protested, man. They protested to the point where Nancy Pelosi just had to give up and leave. And, she got indignant with them for a moment there. She tried to, pretend as though, maybe she was listening to them, but I don't know. By the way that she became indignant, let me know that she wasn't really listening to them as much as she was trying to get them off of her stage. And, they protested because they identify the fact that Democrats do support and have supported historically. They supported deportations. They support ICE. I mean, to the extent that none of the American parties are open borders. I know Republicans try to claim the Democratic Party is open borders, but not by long. I mean, President Obama was the deporter in chief up until Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump is he's got a long way to go to actually catch up with Barack Obama in terms of deportations, but he's trying. He's doing his best to outdo Barack Obama on deportations, particularly if you want to know the difference, it would be DACA and then President Trump's attempt to undermine DACA and the subsequent deal that he's trying to broker now with Pelosi and Schumer. But coming full circle, the Democrats need to be protested on this issue as well. Democrats are not Democrats break up homes just as much as Republicans. And again, it could, I don't want to oversimplify it, but Democrats historically used language that is anti-immigrant to pacify that gene in America that's like, the illegals are coming. And so the protest, while it may not have made sense to a lot of people, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that Dreamers would protest Nancy Pelosi, for one, to make sure that the deal that they're hammering out, which I have not seen a final version of. It's been a long day, but I have not seen a final version of this so-called deal that they made with Donald Trump. So they should protest in the sense of, we need to know, what are we actually negotiating with Trump in exchange for him not to rescind DACA. But then two, just on GP, Democrats can't play the role of innocent or heroes in this case. Right? Because historically, they have been basically as problematic as Republicans, with the exception of Donald Trump. I mean, if you look at the Bush administration, the Bush and the subsequent Bush, the Bush before Bush, before Clinton, they had similar policies, or they were not Donald Trump. Right? There was compassionate conservatism where they were trying to hammer out paths to citizenship or hammer out some type of amnesty in order to make sure that families weren't broken up. Right? So, this is just to underscore the fact that Democrats have the ability to posture on DACA, and Donald Trump has given them the window, the opportunity to posture. But the Democrats have yet a lot to answer for in terms of immigration. And I think that should explain why this protest took place. Now, the protest in and of itself, it's significant, but that's not really where I wanted to land. That's just the entrance into what I really want to talk about, which is really this division that conservatives try to play on, and many black conservatives who don't want to admit that they're conservatives, so they don't necessarily go out and vote at all. But if they did go out and vote, they probably would have voted for Trump. There's an entire vein of black conservatism that is as xenophobic, and I'm going to throw in homophobic for good measure, because I want you to understand the nature of, and I can summarize it and kind of use a shorthand and call them hoteps, or the black nationalist movement. And they would fool you and make you think that they are progressive in the sense that they are anti-racist. Well, sure, they're anti-racist. They're black. So, I mean, they're not like David Clark in that regard. I wouldn't insult them that far and say that they were, Clayton Bigsby's or Uncle Ruckus's. But that's the extent. That is quite literally the extent of their progressiveness, is their anti-racism and their opposition to white supremacy. But there is a black supremacy that is that they are seeking to replace white supremacy. And it's the same supremacy construct that has the ability to look at another marginalized group, or a marginalized group in general, and to make an enemy of them. And in this group, the enemy of black nationalists, hoteps, or black supremacists, or whatever category, they may not even know what those are, but it's a vein of black conservatism that looks at immigrants, illegal or otherwise, as the enemy. And we can get to the specifics of the arguments that they make as we go along, because I'm going to be talking about this for a while going forward. But the targets of their community, the target of this community is generally, white people. Yeah, but what's funny about this is that they have more in common with white supremacy than they ever would like to admit. But their targets are the LGBTQ community, definitely the LGBTQ community, and the immigrant community. And the reason it's important for us to talk about this with the broader audience, one, is because it's the same thing as with the conspiracy theory left. We have platforms, and if we do not challenge other people when they create narratives or when they forward narratives, then their narratives are able to take root without challenge. And then we look back and say, how the hell did we get here? Well, we got here because people like Benjamin Dixon didn't speak up and speak out a long time ago for the sake of, I just can't fight everybody every single day. Some days I just don't feel like fighting. And this is one particular community that, that really works my nerves, because here's the reason they work my nerves. How can you not see your complicitness with the same people that you pretend that you're fighting white supremacy against? Let me rephrase that. How can you not see that you forwarding this idea that illegal immigration and immigration in general is a threat to the black community, and not realize that you're forwarding the same exact arguments and protecting the same exact system that systemically marginalizes black people? Let me make it clear with the LGBTQ community. How can they not see that by them being homophobic, they are undergirding a system that is not only designed to marginalize the LGBTQ community, but also designed to marginalize the black community? And furthermore, how can they not realize the many fabulous intersections between being black and being gay? not just modern, but historic. I mean, it's not as though there are not any black gay people or lesbians in history or today present. So it blows me away every time I see, and they proclaim to be militant, but to me it's like militancy would recognize the root of your enemy, the true enemy, and recognize that, okay, here, let me use me for an example. Here's an example. I would say, yeah, I came out of a similar community. I never looked at the immigrant community as a threat or as an enemy. But I did at one time look at the LGBTQ community because of my religious background and looked at them as a group to be challenged and rights to be withheld and gay marriage, what? You know, particularly, and not particularly, but in addition to just the gay and lesbian community, it was the transgender community. And where I made progress on understanding the rights that should be given and expanded to the LGBTQ community because, well, at that time it was the LGB community, LGBTQ, because I was leaving out the trans community. I had not come full circle to understand the fight or at least become an ally for the trans community. And one day, I don't know if that made sense to you guys, but hopefully to you all, hopefully they did. One day I had good friends, two good friends in particular, Pam and Kevin, who challenged me and would not let up because I'm making excuses for explaining my transphobia. I'm making excuses, and them challenging me and never letting up helped me get to the point when one day I realized it was a combination of them challenging me, but then I realized in the wake of Michael Brown, this may be confusing to you guys, but it makes perfect sense to me because I guess I lived it. When I saw what happened to Mike Brown and I saw the systemic nature of what Bob McCullough and the prosecuting attorneys did over there in Ferguson and how they helped they, instead of indicting Darren Wilson, they helped get him exonerated before the grand jury. When I saw how that system worked, I made a declaration that day that every single facet of that system must be torn down. And anything that system opposes, then that's something that I need to be for. And I cannot say that categorically, but I can say that specifically with regards to the transgender community. Because I was like, if I'm holding on to my bigotry and my phobia of the transgender community, then I am helping to sustain and support this white supremacist, patriarchal, homophobic, xenophobic system that is killing us, black people particularly, literally killing us. And what do I look like undergirding any portion of that system because my bigotry was groomed in that system? Can I not get over my bigotry enough to protect and defend myself? What I'm saying is by me supporting and being transphobic, I am giving voice to the same exact system that will shoot black men in the streets. Then that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, well, when you see that homophobia is transphobia, is xenophobia, it is racism, it is sexism, they are all the same. They are all the same manifestations of hatred. They all come from the same rotten root of white supremacy in the United States of America. And when you see that it's really the same hatred, just expressed to different groups and experienced differently, right? Yes, the LGBTQ community, if we don't take the different intersections thereof, they experience the bigotry in the United States differently than they would if they were just a black person. Right? There's a unique experience that a black trans woman experiences in America. So it's unique in how it is received and who it's targeted to. But the root of it is the same. It is the same system that wants to keep America, like Bill O'Reilly said, run by white Christian men. And anyone who is not a white Christian man has to fight tooth and nail to get anything in this country. has had to fight and continuously has to fight. And so by us in the black community attacking immigrants, you do realize the number one reason white America, or conservative America particularly, does not want immigration is because they do not want the browning of America to occur. These are not, I am not making this up. These are literal words out of the mouths of mainstream Republicans like Bill O'Reilly, as he spoke to John McCain, who was at the time a 2008 candidate for the president of the United States. And so here is Bill O'Reilly and John McCain on the biggest network in the country talking about the problem with immigration is the browning of America and the fact that we would be weakening the white male Christian power system in America. And I'm sorry, that's exactly what the hell we need to do. So if they're afraid of immigrants doing that, then by God, those are my allies, because that is the same power structure that will undermine. I mean, and I'm arguing this. Listen, I'm arguing this not from a human rights perspective, because it's kind of simple when you think about a human rights perspective. I'm not even arguing this right now from a class critique of capitalism. I will probably argue that later on this week. I'm arguing what is the logic of black people fighting against the browning of America. Oh, they're going to take our jobs. Negro, they were never going to give you that job unless you were willing to work under the table for a lower wage. We'll get to the class construct of this tomorrow, right? But I'm just talking about the literal logic of you supporting a white supremacist argument because whatever your reason to oppose illegal immigration or immigration in general. Like, I have people in my timeline, friends on Facebook, who are livid about this, about the fact that America is extending rights to immigrants. And again, I'm separating these arguments because it's probably going to take a week or two to cover everything. But for right now, here's how you know it's not an economic thing for white people, because they benefit from illegal immigration. There is a reason yes, illegal immigration does have a cumulative effect of reducing lowering wages. But do you think for one hot second that's not precisely what conservatives who are trying to keep you angry with immigrants, do you not believe that that's exactly what they want? If they really wanted to end illegal immigration or immigration period, they would penalize the corporations and the individuals who profit off of cheap labor. But the number one thing, oh my God, I don't even know why I have to explain this, because you would think people who think they're smart would actually research enough to realize that this has always been, I'm getting to the class argument, this has always been a quest for the cheapest labor possible. And so if they can get it from immigrants, they will get it from immigrants, and they will make sure that illegal immigration is always possible so that they can always, this is just a big game to them. They don't want to end illegal immigration. If they build walls, they're going to build tunnels underneath the wall so they can keep a steady supply of the cheapest labor possible. And it's not just about cheap labor. There are entire groups of immigrants who are top tier, and we can discuss that also. But for right now, because you know me, we'll get into a class argument and I'll get into the weeds of the class argument. But the number one reason is not economic that white people oppose, that conservatives particularly oppose immigration. The number one reason, as espoused by the leading voices in conservatism, is the fear of the browning of America and the reduction of the power structure, or the removal of the power structure, rather, from white Christian men. So I'm sorry, if that's your preeminent problem with immigration, then brown this motherfucker like gravy. Get some browning sauce and put it in a skillet and stir that thing around and brown America as quickly as possible. Because that is the power structure that has, I don't even have to put a qualifier on it. That is the power structure that has damaged Black America. That's number one. Number two, here's the other logical problem with it. Do you not realize that there are Black immigrants, legal and illegal? So for black people to actually make this argument, they literally have to narrow it down to African Americans. Never mind Haitian Americans. Never mind the Jamaican Americans. Never mind anyone from the Caribbean, the Bahamian America. Never mind any African immigrants. They have to narrow their worldview down to specifically serve African Americans. And you know why that is ridiculous? Because once you become a nigga in America, you're treated the same. Once you come to America and you are black, when you get stopped by the police, they do not care if you're from Jamaica. They don't care where you're from. You are just another. And so for us to be undermining the immigrant argument or the rights being extended to immigrants is absurd. It's absurd. Because you have to narrow your entire worldview to, whatever happened? This completely goes counter to any of the Pan-African movements that are at the core of a lot of this. Don't get me wrong, there's like a lot of different groups and subgroups, but a lot of these same people will believe that they're Pan-Africanists, where they're looking for the people of the diaspora. They're like looking for all black people. In one sentence, they're looking to unify all black people. In the next sentence, they only want to serve African Americans because that conveniently allows them to make the argument against immigration. So logically, this whole thing is completely absurd. And I'm sorry. I know this is almost like a micro argument because it's an argument in a group of a subgroup. But that argument is spreading. That thing is spreading, man. There's a lot of voices out there who are trying to pit African Americans against every other marginalized group because they honestly think that it's just us, that it's us by ourselves. It's either that or they really do promote black supremacy. And I'm sorry, folks, I'm not fighting against white supremacy to put up any other type of supremacy. I'm not fighting against, I'm going to patriarchy to exchange it for black patriarchy. And then the argument goes the same way. That's how I started this whole conversation. Goes to the LGBTQ community as though some of our most brilliant minds were not gay, or lesbian, or queer. So that's that. I don't want to harp on that too much because I can't really finish that conversation without getting to the class critiques of it, and also the straight economic discussions of wages and labor pool. And I want to talk about each of those individually. But I just don't understand for the life of me how people do not see by arguing this, you are supporting white supremacy. Period. By arguing against, particularly using a capitalist argument. See, the problem, folks, I'm trying not to go into a class critique here, but the bottom line, the fundamental problem is capitalism. And it's amazing to me, people who understand a class critique when it comes to the bourgeoisie Negroes, they dismiss the class critique when it comes to immigration. And they dismiss the fact, and they want to make the argument for us taking these low paying jobs, these low wages. They're like, oh yeah, we'll take, black people are hungry. Black people will take, we need those jobs. Let's take any job we can get. But wait a minute, hold on. You've been arguing all this time against the black bourgeoisie class, arguing against the different paths for them to get there. And you've been using a class critique to undermine a neoliberal track to the bourgeois class, but now you're arguing in favor of capitalism for people to go and make McDonald's less than McDonald's wages? I'm sorry, you can't have it both ways. Like, if we're going to fight capitalism, we're going to fight it on both ends. Don't just fight capitalism when you see it with the bourgeois class, the bourgeoisie. Don't just fight it there. Fight it against the people who are making $5 an hour, $2 an hour, 10 cents an hour if they're legal. You have to undermine the entire construct. You cannot argue against a class. You cannot bring a class critique against the wealthy black people in America or wealthy people in general only turn around and say, yeah, but we need to, people are hungry. We can't worry about a class critique when it comes down to people being hungry. That's exactly why they are hungry. This system is not designed for them to survive. This system is designed to take everything it can from them. How are we going to argue? This is what doesn't make sense to me. How are you going to argue against the upper middle class elite of marginalized communities, particularly black or brown communities, people who make it out the hood, people who make it out of the ghetto, people who pat the hustle, people who sell whatever, people who make albums, people who basketball players they broke free, they used their talent and they got free, right? And that's, how are you going to argue against a class critique against what they did? And then turn around and say, well, we should really be focusing on taking these jobs from immigrants because, we need, black folks need that money. So we're going to put them out in the fields and pick tomatoes. Oh, Ben, it's not just tomatoes, it's white, it's blue collar. Then if you're worried about the blue collar and then particularly the white collar, the upper echelon jobs that are being taken by dreamers, then you do realize the solution to that really is a pretty much, inside of a capitalist system. Right? Because you've already stripped away the class critique. Because if you strip away the class critique, then, if you argue it rather from a class critique perspective, then you're saying the entire system is a fraud and we need to tear the entire system down from the richest to the wealthiest to the poorest. But once you strip that away and you're leaving us inside of this class, you're leaving us inside of this capitalist system, then we should therefore be promoting all of those neoliberal meritocracy arguments to push and promote people into higher echelons using the system that's already here. But then you turn around and say, no, that's just a track to the bourgeois class of Negro. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. Why would you argue for black people to take the bottom rung jobs based in a capitalistic system that will never give them a raise and would never give them the job in the first place because they have to actually report that because we're citizens, which is exactly why we have illegal immigration. But it infuriates me, and I hope you guys are following along who may not know the minutia of the different arguments that are going about separating the black community from the Latino community and the immigrant community as if there's no black immigrants. You may not know the minutia, but one of the number one arguments is that black people need jobs. Yeah, black people need jobs. So then you know what? Then we need to, if we're going to not tear down capitalism, then we better play the hell out of capitalism. I'm sorry. I just don't understand. Are we going to engage in capitalism or not? Because if we're going to engage in capitalism, then fine. Then let's engage in it. But then you cannot simultaneously tear down people who use capitalistic means to get where they are. And then they try to, or are you saying it's not, if you're saying it's not scalable, it's not, okay, great. Let's say that it's not scalable for everybody's not going to be a basketball player. Every black person's not going to be a football player, a rapper. They're not going to start a business. Every black person's not going to, you know why? Because the system is not designed, the capitalist system is not designed for the many, it's designed for the few. Therefore, if you argue against the bourgeois class from a capitalist critique, a class critique, how in the hell do you drop that critique in exchange for saying black people should take these jobs from immigrants because we just need to get whatever we can get? God dog it, I did not mean to go into that one tonight. That was going to be tomorrow. So we're simultaneously robbing. You know what I think it is, though? I think people they've mastered the art of contrarianism to the point where they just oppose every goddamn thing that they come across. They just oppose it. Whatever's Trump, we oppose it. Obama, we oppose it. Emmys, we oppose it. Capitalism, we'll oppose it today. Okay, capitalism that keeps wages low. Well, we're going to oppose we're going to oppose illegal immigration and we'll just turn a blind eye to the capitalism that keeps wages low because we want to oppose illegal immigration here. There's no consistency. It is either a class critique or not. Either we're going to tear the system down or we're going to teach everyone how to play the hell out of the system. Which one is it? Which one is it? The fact of the matter is we got to tear it down because no matter how much we teach them, it's only going to be one in a million that are going to make it out. 4% of impoverished people make it out of poverty to the wealthiest, leaving 96% behind. So the critique of illegal immigration must absolutely be from a class critique, which says that the reason we have this scenario in the first place, the reason that they are crossing the border in the first place is because capitalists in the United States of America want the cheapest labor they could possibly get. Well, Ben, how does that change the scenario for the people who don't have jobs? They could totally go out there and you know what? It doesn't. You know why it doesn't? Because no amount of going out there is going to get a business who can get labor for $4 an hour or 10 cents an hour going to turn around and hire you for $4.25 an hour. $4.25 was the minimum wage when I was a kid. So I don't even know what the hell it is right now. And depending on where you are. They're not going to do it. And here's the problem. These people who are making these arguments, they're not making the arguments against the capitalistic system and the businesses, rather, who are profiting off of the cheap labor. They're making the arguments against the labor. So once again, we've given a free pass to capitalists to get away with murder, economic murder, and we blame the groups that are victimized. If you came to this argument and said that the government needs to crack down on businesses that employ cheap labor or illegal immigrants, then I don't think there's anybody out here who's going to argue against you. But what you have done instead is say, immigrants ain't going to do nothing for black people. And so you made an enemy. You're making enemies of the black community and the brown community, when in actuality, capitalism is rather global. It is a global construct. And so if anything, there needs to be solidarity between the black communities and the perfect example. Y'all motherfuckers want us to have solidarity with poor white people. When it becomes a convenient argument for you to forward, then you'll ditch it when it's not because you're not consistent with your capitalist critique, right? But you want us in one breath to have unity with poor Trump supporters because, that's exactly how we're going to, viva la revolution. The proletariat revolution, international revolution can only take place when poor people of all colors unify. But wait, Negro, you over here making us enemies of brown people. Pitting us against our brother and our sister who was marginalized globally by capitalism. The inconsistency is glaring. And there is only one way that you can be consistent with this and argue against the depression of wages. And that is if you attack the corporations who benefit off of it. And how much easier, we're trying to regulate the flow of millions of people across the border when we can regulate corporations who hire people illegally. Which one do you think is more efficient? But what I realized is that it's not really about with white people, white conservatives and black hoteps. It's not really about illegal immigration so much as it is having a convenient villain for you to build your platform off of. And that's why the goalpost is always moving. It's because they have to shift. And who is the villain of the week? Pretty much the progressive left. We really only have one real villain. And you know who that one real villain is? It's not Hillary Clinton. It's capitalism. That's it. That's the number one. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes my comrades, you guys get a little itchy, and you start just week after week find somebody else to attack. But in terms of the fundamental nature of our criticisms and our critique, both academically, logically, and just politically, it is the manner in which we engage in capitalism and how it eviscerates working class people across the globe. So we can consistently address every single one of these issues. And if you want to address the fact that black people aren't getting jobs, if you want to address the fact that when they do, the wages are depressed, then you address it against the capitalists who are profiting off of it and who know. And then simultaneously, I got to finish that thought. The capitalists who profit off of it and simultaneously attack the very people that they're bringing over. How else do you think these they're so freaking dumb. I can't believe it. How they would vote for Donald Trump and then turn around and realize, oh, you mean I got Jose is going to get deported? Yeah, you dumbass. You know why? Because here now you don't have anyone to do the job for you because they fooled you into undermining your own capital. They fooled you. They simultaneously enjoy the profits off of illegal immigration as they do attacking illegal immigrants. I mean, seriously, in a single day, I wonder how many Trump supporters in a single day go and collect money and profits off of illegal immigration and turn around and go to a rally against illegal immigration. This is the game that they play. This is the game the individuals play. This is the game the corporations play. And the only way it logically makes sense is if they just need a villain. That's it. Not as though they actually care about illegal immigration because they need that cheap labor. If they could get slave labor, they would get slave labor. It's about them having a convenient villain. And I believe that is consistent. That is consistent with the Black Hotep nationalist movement. And the people who want to make enemies out of it. Everybody needs somebody to blame. Particularly people who are building platforms. They need someone to blame so that they can have somebody to rail against. I mean, you can't just flat-footed argue your ideas without having a villain to rail against. And so here we are with an entire movement of people black people who are making enemies out of the brown community. Simultaneously, the same people who, on the other side of the equation, white supremacists who are making enemies out of the brown community, are killing black people. Jason Stockley just got acquitted. St. Louis, protests all over St. Louis. Police cracking down like a out of this world in St. Louis. In defense, police officers chanting, whose streets? My streets. They're doing this on the backs of the black people that they've killed. And at the same time, they're executing, warrants for ICE. They're doing the job of ICE. They're willingly and happily do the job of ICE agents. And you mean to tell me that you want to support that portion where they go after illegal immigrants, but don't see how your support for when they go after illegal immigrants is going to turn around into you supporting your own destruction? It's like cancer. You like what cancer is doing on this side of the equation, but I can finish the analogy, but I don't even want to finish the analogy for reasons. But it's like a disease. Let's just use a no-name disease. The disease, you like what the disease does in this category, but you hate what it does to you. You like what the disease does to your enemy, but you hate what it does to you. But then you can't support a disease. You can't support a cancer and not expect it to spread to you. You can't support a plague, a pestilence, and then and be surprised when it comes back to destroy your community. Same thing with the LGBTQ community, fam. And this is the thing that I learned last. And I'm still learning other stuff. But the last thing I learned, and the when I added the T to my allyship to the LGBTQ, I added the T, LGBTQ. I added it because I realized my phobia of the trans community is undergirding, it is supporting the same white male Christian power structure that attacked and killed Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, any number of people that we could put in that behind the hashtag, my friend Corey. That's the same system. Those are the same people who are trying to stop the LGBTQ community. Yeah, Ben, but I don't ever see where the Hispanics at, Ben. Where the LGBTQ community at when they out there protesting for black? When we protest for Black lives, we don't ever see them. Negro, probably because you never get from behind your computer. Right? I mean, I'm sorry. I can't just look at a person and say, oh, they're LGBTQ. I mean, I can't. Can you? If you can, then you're probably a bigot. But yeah, you don't know. I mean, how do you know that there were no gay people out there? And how do you know there's no gay black people? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You do realize there are black Latinos, right? There's Afro Latinos. Oh, you didn't know that? Oh man, so much ignorance that gets passed around. The bottom line is that there must be solidarity because there is. We are one. We are one. We are the black community and the LGBTQ community. There's not separate communities. They're all intermingled and interwoven and intermixed. The Latino community. And don't get me wrong, you can ask my friend Cesar Vargas. There's a lot of fight to be had in that community, within that community, about their bigotry towards black people. Yeah, but you know what? Just like I'm fighting against the bigotry in my community towards brown people. But we are one people fighting against a white male Christian power structure that is relentless. That is, I'm sorry, I need to add one thing to that, which is the most important. A white male Christian capitalist power structure. That is at the crown. That is at the epoch. That is at the crowning achievement of this white male Christian structure. Is their defense of capitalism against all of the obvious and glaring effects and manners in which it ravages every other community, even the white community. We are one people fighting against a machine, a system, quite literally a system that has racism so entrenched, homophobia so entrenched, xenophobia so entrenched. It's intrinsic. It is critical to the functionality of the system, such that I do not understand. I do not understand, and no longer can we tolerate divisions within our subgroups. We can't. We are allies. We're allies just because we all it's like damn. Do you not have a mixed family? Do you not have some Hispanics, some Latinos in your bloodline? Do you not have some LGBTQ people do you not have disabled people in your family? Like, are you a pure African bloodline? No, get the hell out of here. And if that's what you're going for, then guess what? You are as much my enemy as white supremacists. Bottom line. If you can look at your family and be like, oh, he's gay, so therefore I don't want him to have rights and I'm shun him, then you are not my brother. You are my enemy. Anyone anyone that is the enemy of marginalized groups is my enemy. Our enemy. It's pretty simple, folks. All right, I'm sorry I didn't mean to go all the way there. Some other stuff I wanted to cover, couldn't cover it. Normally like to have fun on these nighttime shows, but as you can tell, this shit's been pissing me off. It has. All right, folks. That's it. I was going to plug Patreon, but not tonight. See you tomorrow. Oh, what the fuck are you laughing at? That's the wrong button. Here we go. See you tomorrow.